Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for joining us for Stars of Franchising.
Get ready for a roller coaster ride through the world of franchising as we bring you the best stories of inspiration and entrepreneurial grit and turning dreams into franchise realities.
That's right, Vinny. From emerging to global brands, we'll chat with the genius minds behind the magic. All brought to you by the Tariq Farid Franchise Institute at Babson College. I'm Ab.
And I'm Vini. Now, buckle up for some serious inspiration.
Well, welcome to our podcast today. Our guests, Winn Claybaugh and John Kanski. Welcome, gentlemen.
It's a
Thanks for
pleasure.
having
I,
us.
I can't believe you asked us. We're thrilled about this.
We're excited to have you. Vinny and I are so appreciative of your time and want to hear more about your stories and current endeavor at Pet Dog or at Salty Dog, excuse me, and also the history. And we like to start with what calls you to do what you do and your personal why. So maybe if you want to kick it off there, we can get rolling here for our audience.
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure. Babson's a phenomenal school, and man, when they come calling, you just first of all scratch your head, and you're like, man, I wonder why. This is exciting. So for that, I appreciate the opportunity. I always love talking about Salty Dog. I mean, my why. I'm a serial entrepreneur at heart, and I think at our core, we look for problems, we create solutions, and we try to sell it. Now, with my background, uniquely as and partners with Winn, we have a background in the hair industry,
Right.
and particularly we create students, and so we're always trying to give more opportunities and more value to that student. And so the idea came about like, could we create an opportunity for kids that already have the hard skills behind clipper over comb, scissor over comb, and maybe don't like people as much because that kind of is happening now. Like, how cool would it be to work with dogs? And so the idea was to create and solve a problem. Ton of dogs, no groomers, just like 20 years ago. Ton of people with hair, even though my partner doesn't have any. There
I
were a
knew
lot of
that was
people with
coming.
hair,
I knew that jab was on its
and
way.
and quite frankly, not enough hairdressers. So, he fixed that problem, 3 decades ago. I said, hey, the same problem exists with dogs. What do you think? And so here we are, and it's been a blast, really. And that's really my why.
Wow, that's great. Well, first of all, Vinny and Ab, it's truly a pleasure, and I love the first question. I mean, what a great way to start this off. What's our why? What's our purpose? And I have a feeling, especially in the last couple of years, I heard somebody say that the pandemic was like God sent the entire planet to their room. Everybody, go to your room, take a time out. When you come back, you better have a better approach to life. And I think that's what happened to a lot of people. There was this mass exodus. Everybody quitting their jobs without even a backup. And the reason why is they didn't want to return to the life that they had before. And so what gets me out of bed every single morning, I'm 64 years old. I have an 11-year-old daughter. And so you better believe that she's a big part of my purpose and my why. And my why today is very different than what it was maybe
Yeah.
5 years ago or 40 years ago when I first opened up my first Paul Mitchell school. And for me, it's about having a large circle of influence and making a difference and creating a culture, a company where people can come and feel like they belong and they get to pursue their purpose and their why. And I am so passionate about that, about just being a good human being and creating opportunities for other good human beings.
Wow. Well, when you talked about culture, and it's something I know is very dear to your heart and the heart of John as well. Can you elaborate why culture? Why is it important? How has it played a role in what the two of you have done so far?
It's a great question, and I'm gonna answer this with a joke. So this business owner is giving a tour of his business, of his company, and the person asks, "So how many people work here?" And the business owner responded with, "Oh, about half work here." And the reason why that can happen in some companies is because the culture that lives in that company, in that store, in that business is a culture that's toxic.
Hmm.
They say that 50% of people who quit their jobs did so to get away from the boss. And yet we're paying them 100% of their salary, but we're only getting 50% of their capabilities. They show up for one thing and one thing only, and that's the paycheck. But they're not showing up with their passion, with their creativity, with their passion for teamwork. And oftentimes when people aren't performing at their best, what do we want to do? We just want to fire them. And I don't believe that you can fire your way into building a better team of people. And so that's why the culture, yes, the product's important. Yes, the marketing's important. Yes, the location is important, but it's the culture. Culture eats marketing for lunch.
John, go ahead, John.
Well, I was going to piggyback on that. I mean, you know, for me in my life, I'm much younger than Winn, and so I didn't have a lot of experience in companies with culture until I joined him in Paul Mitchell, and I saw what truly a company culture can do. It can change your life, and it doesn't. It breaks age barriers. I mean, from very young, 18-year-old kids coming to school to, you know, the oldest person that's in there. And they can speak the same language when it's around culture.
Wow.
And you just have a higher purpose. So it was definitely, it's not a buzzword for us. It's definitely something that we wanted to build Salty Dog around because we lived it. We saw it in the school, in Paul Mitchell, the school, and it works. So it's like, well, let's just keep that in here and let's figure out a way to scale it. Scaling culture is the real secret.
That's great stuff, and really love you know, how you guys both described it, and more importantly, how you're leveraging the experience with culture and with Paul Mitchell to solve, you know, other pain points, namely with, you know, dog and pet owners. But so let's talk a little bit about some nitty gritty and what worked for you in your prior at Paul Mitchell, and what types of things can other leaders learn from that you're using at Salty Dog to really scale it and have an impact for your employees and their communities. And what's special about the franchise model to allow you to scale the culture?
Yeah.
If I could start that one, and then John, you can jump onto that one. Something as simple as making the environment fun. Coming to work every day. Why can't it? Doesn't matter what you're selling. Why can't it be a fun, healthy culture? You know, what do they say? If you're laughing or having fun at work, what does that mean? That you're not working. Back to work. No fun around here. Why does it have to be that way? So just something as simple as making it fun. And John is right. We can get very, very specific exactly what it needs to look like in order to create that healthy culture that brings out the best in people.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add to that because it gets very simple. I'll be called into a store and hey, can you help us? Sure. And this goes to the scaling thing. So the first thing I want to know is, are you having that morning meeting? And even though the content, oh, well, there's only two of us or three of us, and we pass each other in the hallway. Yeah, we talk about what's coming in today and who's got what. But our system's very specific. It starts with a very specific thing, and that is to identify, we call it facing, to celebrate victories. Even if it's simply, hey, over the weekend I got a flat tire, I totally knew how to change it all by myself. Whatever that is, it just sets up. It's a way to set the day, and then you can get into some of the fine details of how we're going to approach the day. Every time I go into a business, a school or a Salty Dog, and maybe they're struggling, that's the first question. 100% of the time it's, well, we don't do that one. We do the weekly. I'm like, you guys, this is how we scale culture. You start with that one, and you do it the way we always do it. And you start with victories and celebrations. You make people feel good. And you talk about the silliest stuff. And then you end a specific way. You end with an energizer. And what I love seeing is when people put more effort into how that energizer is. I mean, it's, you know, pull out some peanut M&Ms, all right? However many you pulled out, it's that many truths and one lie. And then people guess. I mean, just the craziest things, but it starts the energy. So that those little things become how you scale. And then you pull it into your weekly and your monthly and then your professional development training days. I mean, it becomes very much a part of your system, and you can inspect that, which is great.
This is awesome. Now you spoken about culture. You know, you're not able. It's very difficult to separate culture from leadership, because at the end of the day, you set the tone from the top. And I know you both have a unique and interesting definition of leadership. I don't know whether you want to elaborate on that.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, there's two definitions of leadership that I like to share. Leadership is someone who gets the job done along with the efforts of other people who gladly and confidently follow. Now, there's a couple of parts to that statement, because I know leaders who do get the job done along with the efforts of their people, but their people don't gladly and confidently follow them. And to me, that's not leadership. My other definition of leadership is someone who has influence over another human being. And the reason why that definition of leadership is so important is because it applies to everybody. Because leadership is not a title, leadership is not a position, leadership is an energy, it's an attitude, it's a mindset. And you can be brand new working in a company, but you are a leader. Why? Because you have influence over other people. How I easily share that with my audience, with my team members, is standing in line at the grocery store with all of those other strangers in the grocery store. Could you make that stranger's day? The answer is yes. Can you ruin that stranger's day? And of course, the answer is yes. So even with total strangers, we have leadership simply because we have influence. Now, apply that to the work environment. You walk into this building, you walk into this store every single day, you have influence. Are you making people's day, or are you ruining people's day?
Yeah, I love that. I'll add a more practical kind of part to that, and that is, I'm often asked, "Hey, is this a semi-absentee business, or where are you at with that?" And it's an interesting legal question. You got to be careful how you answer it. And I always say, the absenteeism is the backside of the approach to that. I know people that can walk in a room and in less than 30 seconds completely change the energy, the temperature. That's leadership. So how much are you in your business? It's really irrelevant. It's what influence do you have in your business. Now, when you get technical on, is it semi-absentee? I know people that honestly can get on a phone and move mountains. I know people that via Zoom or phone are terrible, but in person, they're amazing. So, the absenteeism comes, it's finance. Can they prove it in the financial model? You see where they're paying someone to run the day-to-day. But when it comes to leadership, and if it's an absent or semi-absent or a full model, that really all depends on the type of leader that you are and what you can do. And it ties into what Winn's saying. Do you move people in a positive way, or do you move people in a negative way? And that answers that question usually.
I'm going to ask a quick follow-up before I pass it on to Ab. You talked so much about leadership. I love the way you define leadership, but now I want to go back to your comments about culture, because when I saw your logo and everything you do, just trying to understand in the last few minutes, you look like an organization that is quite innovative. You think outside the box. So could there come a moment when your culture can hold you hostage? And then what is it that you're doing to ensure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, I know that one. Well, for me, I got to tell you, the pandemic really pulled that question out. So can you do what you say?
Yeah.
Any of us can get on stage and get on a call and rah-rah and this and that. But it's really, it's all measured in the actions of how you support your people. And for me, it's really simple. You have kind of an interesting kind of tree of life. I have a big organization, but I have 8 people that I will get up in the middle of the night and go through thick or thin for. And by me doing that, they and I don't say, okay, so you make sure you guys do this. It's osmosis. They kind of learn, I need to do that for my 8 people. It's the only way you can really run an organization. But can your culture hold you? Oh yeah. If you want to have a bad day and let everyone know it, you just don't get to. And you're held to your culture even more the higher you are up the food chain. It's pretty lonely up there, but you wanted it. You asked for this. So if you're going to ask for it, you got to live your culture. You got to walk your talk no matter what.
Okay.
Vinny, I liked what you said, that it has to start from the top. And for as long as we've been in the Palm Mitchell School business, we have brought our leaders together a minimum of twice every single year for 2 to 4 days each time. And by the way, in our 20 plus year history of that, it's 100% representation from all of our 100 plus schools. And those 2 to 4 days are spent strictly with this type of stuff that we're talking about. Yeah, we talk a little bit about our product. Yeah, we talk about regulatory issues. Yes, we talk about HR stuff. But the majority of the training that we do is about leadership. How can I show up as a better husband? How can I show up as a better human being? How can I show up as a better leader and a mentor to the people that have chosen to give their hearts and minds and creativity to this company? And that's a big part of what we train. It's all about train. You never graduate from any of this stuff.
Wow.
That's great stuff, and really shows how invested you are in your partners, team members, and I imagine franchisees, which is critical as you're scaling. John, you pointed to something, the question on semi-absentee or absentee, and there's myths out there around franchising where you get the playbook and it's easy, or I don't have to be involved. Can you talk a little bit about that to dispel some of those myths and a common myth that you saw maybe early on in the days and maybe some that still exist that you have to dispel as you seek to scale?
For sure. So the first thing I would say is this: depending on the size of the brand, there are ways you got to look at things differently. So, I was fortunate enough to be a franchisee in the Paul Mitchell world for the last 17 years. So from that perspective, I have one kind of approach. It was a power brand. It had a lot of things already built. All I had to really do was find my way of following that system. And if being semi-absent was your thing, it wasn't for me. I wanted to be hands-on, but you could do it. It was a very mature brand. It had a lot of pieces. The problem is my partner sitting next to me didn't allow that. You were hands-on. You knew your students' names. You knew when they were graduating. Yeah. You knew every issue, and that's what we signed up for. And there are brands that are like that. I think when the brand is newer, and they're telling you it's semi-absent, I just don't think that's really a fair assessment.
Yeah.
You really do need passionate people that are good operators. And those operators need to be able to take your system, hold that system to the true way it's meant to be, put your spin on it, but follow that system, and then you'll create the culture.
Right.
And so I get asked that a lot. Hey, is this a semi-absent? Actually, it's one of the first questions that a lot of times I'm asked. And when I'm asked that, I'll be honest, it's a disqualifier for me.
I was going to ask you that. What does that tell you about that person or potential franchisee?
Right? Yeah, it's an investment, and there's so many other ways to make money. I mean, I just really go do that. I get it, yeah. And again, I don't discourage anyone from. Just take a moment to learn about us, and then you'll understand why. Now, once you're in the brand and the brand has grown on you, and could you step away? Well, of course you can, but you definitely are bleeding. In this case, red, gray, and black. In the Paul Mitchell world, it was black and white. And then it allowed me to step away and really develop a lot of things with Salty Dog. So
great stuff.
That's a funny question. Every show I get that.
Winn, what do you think? What have been some of your experiences with common misconceptions or perceptions about franchising, what it is or isn't?
Well, I think that the reason why we choose to be franchisors, franchisees, entrepreneurs is because we do want to have that freedom. We do want to be able to build something to a level where we can step away a little bit. I love the fact when my daughter was born 11 years ago, I had the opportunity to move my office to my home and to scale back my in-person commitment to my company. Why? So I can go be a dad. So that's why we became entrepreneurs. But I had made the mistake in the past thinking that I could completely be absent. And that was not only expensive and heartbreaking, it was not the person that I am. And so, I do stay involved. But as John says, we can scale that back once we're truly invested.
Right.
Like John saying, that's a disqualifier when somebody says, I don't really want to be there. It's like saying, I want to open up a Salty Dog, but I hate dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
And we got that, believe it or not, we did get that in the very beginning. I think our goal was to open up 7 Paul Mitchell schools. We now have 110. And we did have people come along the way, and we could tell, because our interview process, and John could tell you because he went through this, our interview process lasted, 2 or 3 days, John? And it was full of that interview process was activities, and now you're going to role play, and you'd have these people who would just totally, nah, I'm not available for that. Or they'd be on their cell phone out in the hallway. It's like, if you're ignoring us right now, guess who else you're going to ignore in the future? Your customers, your students. You know, you're going to be too busy for your own students who are paying you X number of dollars to attend your school. So that's a disqualifier. You don't like kids, you don't like students, you don't like dogs. Those things are important.
Well, let me, before I kick it over, what I'm hearing, which is critical, right? That importance of that relationship and partnership, right? It's a 10-year, at least sometimes, relationship.
It is critical.
And I think a lot of people don't recognize that, franchisors and potential franchisees, how important that fit is. And not every fit is right, but getting it wrong can be, as you describe, painful and expensive.
Yes.
Vinny?
Yeah, thank you. Winn, when you kicked off your response to the last question, you mentioned three things: franchisor, franchisee, entrepreneurs. But you know, quite a number of people out there will say that franchisee or franchisor, they are not entrepreneurs, because they get the playbook, as Ab was referring to earlier on. It's easy, you know, you get the playbook, there's nothing entrepreneurial about it again, you know. You just go with the flow. What would you say to that statement?
I think I would disagree with that. I think that just because you're jumping on board with somebody else's idea, and you better believe you're buying their best practices, you're buying that playbook, you're buying the systems. This is exactly how we run a successful business, and we all learn from each other. You know, as they say, some of the best ideas that run a successful brand did not come from the franchisor. They came from the franchisees. They came from the individual stores. And it's the franchisor's job to now bring those on as best practices and share with every other location. But you better believe there's an entrepreneurial attitude and energy that goes along with that. I'm a franchisee, but I'm an entrepreneur. See, some people think that being an entrepreneur means that you can come and go as you want. You have no responsibility. You have no risk. I can wear whatever I want. Nobody's telling me what to do. And I'm like, you're not an entrepreneur. You're just a bad employee.
Thank you. And then, so we're going to delve into another question now. Looking at, from the experience you've had so far, what do you think the best franchisees do well? And then we flip the coin and just tell us what you think the best franchisors do well.
I think the people that do the best are just continuously learning, and I do believe that they are entrepreneurs to their core, and I believe that you need a brand that allows you to be an entrepreneur, and I think there's ways to do that. Now, there are brands out there that are really established, really developed. They really don't want to deviate out of the lane much. So, you know, just kind of follow it. And, you know, as much as that sounds great, you can limit your growth. You can limit your opportunities. And I think that, I think the people that do best are the ones that just have an eagerness to want to learn. And they want to be able to tell you, I have this idea. I was trying this and trying that. And I think as a good franchisor, you have to be open to really great ideas come across your desk so many times a day. And are your eyes open to seeing it? So that's kind of my top for a franchisee. A franchisor, truly, the minute, I love this line Mike Tyson says in interviews all the time. You know, anytime I felt like I was a big deal, I realized that things were off. You know, it becomes a problem if you really think you're that important. And I think when a franchisor understands they're the facilitator of the funds, they're supposed to get me the best deal possible using the buying power, and they're supposed to give me systems that keep me out of trouble and keep me moving forward. And if the franchisor understands their role is to remove bottlenecks and create solutions, they're going to be a great franchisor. If it's to induce power or influence beyond anything else, you know, there are some out there that are very successful. I think it can stop you in your young years for sure.
Wow. Great stuff. That focus on the unit economics and performance of your franchisees is critical, right?
Yeah.
Well, one thing that you mentioned, both of you, about the need to continue to evolve and innovate and move forward as a brand and as a leader strikes me to ask this question, which is, can you share what were some of the best innovative practices or responses to the pandemic that you saw either from other franchisees or brands as you went through it that have helped guide you today?
Unequivocally, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it was the ability to do things remote and to do them well. Something as simple as my background, my logo, understanding that a white background and how the position I need to be in this camera for you to understand the way I'm looking in the camera. Hopefully you're feeling I'm coming in and out. Those are things that the pandemic, the remote learning was really the technology. Point of sale software, swiping credit cards quicker, all that stuff. It is what it is, and everyone's going to get into that. But remote access to people completely made a vast region get real small. And then training. So keep in mind, we're a training company. Our background, our core is training. And when you can pause learning and rewind and pause and rewind, you can create an environment that used to be fearful, used to block to actually getting the best out of people who probably a lot of times thought they couldn't learn or they weren't good at something. When you bring those things from school, into a business, it's a game changer. And that really got pushed on us heavy by the pandemic. We didn't have a choice. Babson probably didn't have a choice. How did you keep kids in school when this crazy stuff was going on? And, who knew what was going on? Well, you have professors who are extremely smart. They can connect with students in the classroom, but put them on Zoom, and it was snoring. I mean, there's no way. So this became an opportunity for us. There's not a lot of groomers. There's definitely not a lot of training. So what if we could take our best and brightest, put them right in front of you at any time you need them, and make it be something that you can connect with, not just a video that you watch. Great. To me, that's where the tech has expanded.
Great.
Wow. Interesting. Now, I am going to ask a question to Winn, and of course, John, feel free to jump in as well, because Winn, you mentioned a while ago that you insinuated about something that you did something and it was horrible, or it was a failure or something like that. And I want you to take us back there. If you look back now, what would you think was your greatest failure in the world of franchising? That it was a failure, but you learned so much from it, and it's something that you hope that everyone at some point should know about so that they don't repeat the same mistake. What would that be?
What I was referring to back then was thinking that I could replace myself, that I could replace myself to where I could completely pull back. And I'm sure other people who have figured this out, good for them. I have not figured that out yet. So it taught me that I need to be involved. I need to stay involved. And it's the level that I stay involved. I don't stay involved in the accounting department. I don't stay involved in watering the plants at my business. They don't want me watering the plants. They'll all be dead. You don't want me hanging out in the HR department. But I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at. And what I need to always be good at is in cultivating great relationships. And so when I do get off track, it's because I let my ego get in the way. I let my ego get in the way, and I start thinking, no, I don't really care what their opinion is. I don't really care what their advice is. I don't really care what their complaints are, especially if they're about me. I don't care to listen to that. And that's when I get off track. So it's just, John was there. When was that, John? In August. We had a franchisee meeting, and I was kind of put on that chair. You know what, Winn, you need to listen to us right now. And it was wonderful. And they were right. It's exactly what I needed to hear. It wasn't comfortable. It was a little bit painful. But you better believe it was so productive, and it was productive, and it served me well. What do they say? That the 6 words of a failing company are, we've always done it that way.
Right.
Right. And John, for you, what would be maybe your biggest aha moment, or something like
something
that hit you really hard in the face? I say, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. Well, the failure part, I can tell you, was, I call it the circle of influence. You have if you can imagine a bullseye, that center ring are people that you can call in the middle of the night and say, "Hey, can you come get me here?" And they don't even ask why. They grab their keys and they go get you.
Hmm.
And that next ring out might be your friends and family who maybe don't understand you, but they listen. We know you're passionate. What do you need us to do? We're on board. And as that ring gets out, then you eventually reach the general public. When you're starting a franchise, because keep in mind, as a franchisee, I felt like I was a successful franchisee, but the franchisor part, I want to be successful. And what's out there in the marketplace is this: how many units do you have sold?
Yeah.
What is the questions really get different? Yeah, but let me tell you about the first store. No. How many stores you got? So I realized that my rush to get to the people in that center that would just say yes no matter what, that became my first franchisees, they weren't qualified.
Hmm.
And I made that mistake. And I learned the hard way. And it slowed me down. It slowed us down a lot. And if I could take anything back, it would be that. I would really, really don't rush to get franchisees, rush to get qualified franchisees. It's a win-win when you do that. That was definitely a learn for me.
This is quite interesting because it tied back to what Winn said a few seconds ago about the importance of listening. Okay, when they put you in that seat, just sit there and listen. Okay, just listen. Take everything. Don't lose the big picture. Okay, don't focus on the building. Think of the city. And then doing that time and time again is not easy. It's not natural. Listening is not a natural act, even though we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. But oftentimes we have a game plan, and that bullseye, you just zero in there and laser focus, boom, and then maybe we lose as you were saying. Yeah, go ahead, Winn.
Yeah, that is important. But the challenge that I have is I'm a speaker as well. My other career is as a speaker, and I get booked by major companies. I'm a best-selling author, and so people pay me to hear what I have to say. And so you're right. So we spent years learning how to talk, but not too much time on how to listen. And so I have to remind myself, no, this is not your stage right now, Winn. This is your opportunity. Oh, and by the way, that event that I'm talking about that happened in August where I was on the hot seat, let me tell you something. Because of the culture that exists within what we've created, my franchisees were not attacking me. They weren't coming after me. It was with love. Yeah. Truly. It was with their heart. They were, so they were following our culture and how they communicated.
Good.
Even though maybe they were frustrated about a couple of things, even though they were unhappy, they still followed the culture. And bottom line, what's most important about the culture are those relationships.
That's great. Before I ask the next question, you mentioned a book. Could you tell our audience what book was that? Was it on?
So I wrote I'm trying to see if it's around me anywhere. I wrote a book called Be Nice or Else. And I was very, very fortunate to have Larry King wrote the foreword for my book. It was endorsed by Colleen Barrett, who was the female president of Southwest Airlines for many, many years, and even endorsed by people like Betty White. So that was my most important day of my life, the day that Betty White said that she endorsed my book. And by the way, John, she also loved that I had a bald head. So
there we go.
I have a video of Betty White rubbing my head, saying how fabulous she thinks it is.
She loved irony,
Winn, what is it about that book? What was it about the book? What was it that you want our audience? Because we want them to go get the book and read it, digest it, reflect on it, and hopefully act on it. So what is it? One thing you want to a quick gestalt about the book, if you don't mind.
To dispel that myth of what it means and what it doesn't mean about being nice. People think that if I'm nice, people will walk all over me. I can't get the job done. Nobody's going to respect me if I'm too nice. And I just want to dispel that. Nice guys do not finish last. Nice guys can finish first. And that takes us all back to the original part of this interview today, and that is culture.
Yeah.
To break it down, and I I think you said one thing, but remember, I'm paid to speak, so you can't shut me up.
All right.
Here's the simple part of our culture. Our job is to address three basic human needs. Number one, people need to feel safe. Number two, people need to feel that they belong. And number three, people need to feel that they have a purpose. You address those three basic human needs in any environment, whether it's a family, whether it's a circle of friends, whether it's a business, you address those three basic human needs, you're going to bring out the best in each other.
Wow.
Well, that, and the book, by the way, is Be Nice or Else, Winn Claybaugh. We'll put it on the podcast when we broadcast. But you led right into my next question we like to ask about, and I think I know the answer. It's built in your culture. But can you just talk a little bit about the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging in your brand and in other companies, and then also how franchisors, for example, can put in practice ways to make that a priority and a part of their existence based on what you've done.
The world that we live in right now is very, very different, or at least there's better awareness today than there was 3 or 4 years ago. And so as leaders, as team members, as human beings, it's our job to educate ourselves. We can't just use that excuse anymore that we didn't know or we weren't properly trained. So we do need to educate ourselves about diversity and inclusion, and what does that mean, especially for people that maybe we don't have that connection with. Mm-hmm. To go out of our way to learn and to take that hard look. And when we did it, we were proud of what we saw, but we also saw opportunities, lots of opportunities for growth, and that meant, okay, we can't just bring in the best person to talk about how to create a better widget in our company. We need to have people come in and talk about diversity training and inclusion, and
right.
And so we've done that, and we continue to do that.
Wow.
When I look at the roster of experts and speakers and heroes that I'm bringing to my podcast, you better believe it has to be diverse.
Wow.
You better believe that I need to be speaking to all types of voices and heroes and leaders to make sure that we're, I don't want to say checking boxes, because that's not what we're doing, but we are expanding ourselves and we're trying to be more aware.
So Winn and John, I'm going to sort of ask your advice. If you have a group of people, our audience and beyond, that are thinking of getting into franchising, either as franchisee or franchisor, what would be your top advice for them?
So I get asked this a lot, and honestly, and I mean this from my heart, it's how we approach Salty Dog, in that it's really about researching the support. Mm-hmm. So the financial numbers and all that's easy to figure out. I mean, they're printed there. Like, does it make money or not make money? What do I got to spend? What's my ROI? Those are easy things. What happens when a dog gets cut? What happens if a dog, God forbid, runs out the door, something happens, right? Mm-hmm. Or when an employee has a death in the family, or regulatory changes kick in, right? So when you start talking about training, when I do competitive analysis, I mean, I'll try to ask some really kind of interesting questions, and it tells me that they've built stuff or not. Now, here's the thing. We're in education. Our background's in education. We've created our own LMS. I mean, we have a way to train. We know that people learn differently, and we know how to adjust our training to how you learn versus you changing the way you learn to how we train. And those are things that I think when there's a strong support piece, I don't understand how to get financing. Well, just use these two companies. All of a sudden, you're locked into an arrangement that is interesting, and there's prepayment penalties, and there's all these things. That's not support. Just telling me which vendors to use, that's not support. I want to know, like, what happens if this happens? Have you noticed that there's a virus now that's out west and it's starting to head this way? So what are you doing about that? If you don't have support for that, trust me, those things are coming to your business, and you have to. That's what you want to fish for. Check the support, see what they have. Now, the cool part about Salty Dog is, and this kind of goes into the diversity question as well. We're emerging, but trust me, we have tons of horsepower. So when Winn talks about bringing in outside opinions to make sure beauty is diverse, so we're lucky there. We've always been diverse. We've always had the ability to kind of be in the forefront of diversity. But when you're big enough and you can bring in different brands, big brands that invest millions and millions of dollars in making sure this is done correctly and that it improves your company, we get to borrow that. So it's for being new and emerging, it's great that we have these relationships that are kind of like powerhouses. So
Great stuff.
check support,
Wow.
make sure that the training's there. Good training will make up for a lot of mistakes.
Wow. Then I'm going to follow up by asking the question, if you look at the trends in the world today, whether social, technological, regulatory, climate, name it, which of these trends do you think will shape the future of franchising? Of course, in the context of even Salty Dog.
That's
And
funny.
why?
That's not the question that you're reframing that question, and I love it because the question was, what's the biggest fear or what's a challenge for franchising? And it's that R word. It's regulatory.
Yeah.
Okay.
The more we let somebody else dictate what's going to happen within our businesses, it gets very interesting very fast. And I think we're seeing that. So the thing about franchising that's a little bit nerve-wracking is what's going to happen in the regulatory space. And let me tell you, when they come heavy. I mean, I've been a part of it, and logic is not part of the equation. So how can I possibly be in control of all of these factors when we're talking about a franchisee? Yes, I have requirements. Yes, I have things that they must do. However, that relationship between an employee and their employer has to be regulated at that level. And so when you start seeing the heavies come down, that's nerve-wracking to me anyway. So you frame that a little differently. I think technology definitely has a way of improving anything. I mean, there's no question we're seeing it now. I mean, just AI, just learning how to respond to people properly. We've elevated our game in time. But that regulatory thing, I would rephrase that. That's a rough one.
Wow.
Great.
Wow.
Winn, anything to add from your standpoint?
I like how the topic of education is coming up a lot. And when John says, we're an education company, again, what we sell, we're not selling Paul Mitchell shampoo. What we have been selling is education. And that's our product in the Paul Mitchell school world. And so now that we're able to take that experience that we have of developing education, which is a way to help people go from point A to point B, both with their technical skills as well as with their business skills, their attitudes, and now apply that to the Salty Dog world is where we're really shining. That's where we're really able to go to the next level. It's all about anytime that there's a challenge within a company, and oftentimes that challenge, people get bored.
Yeah.
And I think the solution to boredom is education. It's always education, providing people an opportunity to grow. When people say that they want to move on, it's usually because they're bored. They could be doing what some people consider to be the most exciting thing on the planet, but they've been doing it for so long, and they're looking for a way to grow themselves.
But I think, Winn, I will even go beyond that and say that what you people are selling is even goes beyond education because it's mindset. You're trying to cultivate a mindset, and then in that way, it's not just I know. It's like now the way I comport myself is different, and that is what I see you speak to you and John, and it's powerful, and we can't thank you enough for all these insights, Ab.
This is wonderful.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, thanks for acknowledging that, because when we say people need training, they need education, sometimes it has nothing to do with the skill set of how they perform their jobs. Sometimes the education and they're looking to the franchisor, they're looking to the boss, they're looking to the company to help provide them this information, this training, I think is a wonderful resource that we as bosses and companies can offer for our people. Sometimes it has nothing to do with how they perform their jobs every single day. And it has everything to do with how can I become a better spouse? How can I become a better parent? How can I become a better human being? And we become the resource for giving them that training and that opportunity is just, wow. I mean, talk about loyalty.
Right.
Loyalty. It's right there. And we haven't really talked about this, and we don't have to, but philanthropy is a huge, big part of this.
Yeah.
You know, for every company, doesn't matter how big or how small, because some people say, well, when I'm making that much money, then I'll find ways to give back to my community. You made $1, you now have an opportunity, you now have an obligation to turn around and give back, because we're all consumers. We consume air, we consume trees, we consume oxygen, we consume water, we consume the paychecks of our customers, we consume the time, commitment of our team members. We need to be contributors, so we need to look for ways to give back.
Well, on that note, we really appreciate you both, Winn and John, giving back to us, our Babson students, and the broader community across the globe. You really do epitomize, and I know Vinny would agree, what entrepreneurial leadership is all about and creating economic and social value. So thank you both so much, and congrats on all the success, and wish you all the best with Salty Dawg Pet Salon. We can't wait to continue to track your progress, and most importantly, have you here on campus. And if we can assist you in any way on your journey, we'd be happy to do that. But thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stars of Franchising.
Stars of Franchising was produced at Babson College, engineered by Travis Gray. Karen Soa is our guest coordinator, and music by Ralph Taylor.
If you like Stars of Franchising, be sure to review us wherever you get your podcasts, and spread the word and share these stories any way you can.